York Governor Andrew Cuomo is considering signing into law a bill that would automatically restore the voting rights of people convicted of felonies after they've been released from prison. The state assembly passed Senate Bill 830 last week and is now awaiting the governor's signature. It is aimed at improving upon a 2018 executive order signed by the governor. And the bill comes as Democrats across the country continue efforts to restoring voting rights for disenfranchised groups, while GOP-led states move to tighten those restrictions following the 2020 presidential election. Adam Brewster is a CBS News reporter covering special elections and midterms. He's been following the story for us. Adam, explain how exactly does this bill set out to improve upon Governor Cuomo's 2018 executive order?
Right. So about 3 years ago, Governor Cuomo signed an executive order that would basically, his office gets a list of who has been released on parole every month. And then those people who have been released, who are in good standing, they get reviewed. After several weeks they've been released, they receive notice that their voting rights have been restored. And one of the reasons that advocates say this bill was necessary is that this would codify that practice into law, right? Governor Cuomo certainly has used that practice robustly, but he will not be the governor for eternity. And we've seen other states where when the governor's office changes hands, that practices don't always stay in place. And so this was a way to put that practice into place and ensure that it continues past whenever Governor Cuomo's time in office comes to an end. It also, of course, eliminates some of the confusion by restoring it automatically when people are out on parole. There was some confusion, too, about New York was okay if you were on probation, but not if you were on parole. It just added an extra layer of confusion. That eliminates that, and it eliminates that time gap that existed, that few-week delay for many of these people between the time that they were out on parole and the time that they had their rights restored.
I think for some people, it actually might come as news that even after you have served your time in jail, you are able to get many of your rights back, including sort of your right to freely walk about, you still may not be able to vote. So can you talk to us about some of the history behind these restrictive voting policies? Where do they stem from, and how does this impact Black and Latino communities, particularly in New York?
The Brennan Center had a report that they issued many years ago detailing New York's history with this law and how it goes back to the Jim Crow era and when the 15th Amendment was ratified, which was supposed to guarantee the right to vote regardless of race, that many states, including New York, put in these roles that disenfranchise people with criminal convictions. There were often requirements for a governor to step in and approve someone, and throughout history, that has disproportionately affected voters of color, especially in New York, when Governor Cuomo signed that executive order where he said, people on parole, I'll restore your voting rights. He mentioned at that time that 7 in 10 people out on parole in New York were Black or Latino, and that is disproportionate certainly to the population in New York. So the histories of these laws, which were prevalent around the country, date back many years, and the effects of that are still being felt by communities today.
Adam, according to the Brennan Center, millions of Americans are excluded from the voting process on the basis of criminal disenfranchisement laws. How pervasive are these laws in the U.S. That strip the voting rights of people with past criminal convictions?
So you have about 10 states or so that require a governor to sign off and give someone their right to vote back after they have completed their sentence. You have some about 15 or so that only restore them when the full sentence is complete. That's time in prison, probation, parole. You have some that restore it automatically upon release. There's a couple that actually don't disenfranchise people for criminal convictions. Iowa last year, Governor Kim Reynolds, a Republican, signed an executive order restoring rights for most people upon their release from prison. There's certain violent offenders who take a special extra review from the governor. And that's an example that Sean Morales-Doyle from the Brennan Center pointed to as a reason for this New York bill, because that used to be the policy in Iowa. And then when the governor's office changed hands, people, when they left office, Iowa was, when Governor Reynolds signed that last year, was the only state that sort of broadly banned convicted felons from voting when they were released. And her executive order changed that last year. But that used to be the policy, and then when the governor's office changed hands, it went back to that sort of broad ban. And so that's one of the reasons that people have pushed to try to amend state constitutions or put these into law so that it doesn't necessarily depend which party or which governor is sitting in a state's governor's mansion.
You know, a couple of years ago in Florida, voters, there was sort of a referendum, and voters just voted in favor of allowing former felons to vote. But, you know, with some of the media coverage afterwards, there wasn't an indication that an awful lot of them ended up voting. There have been Democratic-led efforts throughout the country to expand voting rights, but often there are Republican-controlled legislatures that kind of push back, make tweaks, and make it difficult. What can you tell us about, you know, some of the efforts on both sides, kind of across the country, to both get more people access to voting and to sort of restrict those who have access?
In Florida, in particular, on that Amendment 4 was the constitutional initiative, or the initiative that passed, the ballot initiative that passed back in 2018, and the legislature put in saying, hey, you have to also pay all of your fines in order to get your rights back. And critics have compared that to a poll tax, and that, but last year a U.S. appellate court upheld that provision. So that was sort of a clarification that Republicans' legislature said they needed to be put in because it was supposed to be when your sentence was complete, and they said that helped define that term. Critics liken it, as I mentioned, to a poll tax. But of course, you know, we've seen throughout this year that there have been, you know, we've talked at length about the efforts in Republican states to sort of add restrictions or make it more difficult to vote for some voters, putting restrictions on mail-in voting, on drop boxes, adding ID requirements that aren't always necessarily intensely strict. You don't necessarily have to provide a copy of your ID, but provide, you know, some sort of number or part of your Social Security number. You know, we've seen that most recently in Florida, awaiting Governor DeSantis' decision. There's debating bills in Texas. Of course, we all remember Georgia. Iowa passed a similar law earlier this year. And on the expansion efforts, though, we saw New Jersey add early voting. Kentucky, which is a Democratic governor but a heavily Republican legislature, they added a couple of days of early voting. Now, Republicans have pointed to both those states in places like Florida and Texas and Georgia, saying, hey, we have more early voting than both those states, even if we are, you know, cutting back some days or time, you know, we have more early voting days than those states do in particular. And on the issue of you know, formerly incarcerated people, Virginia has been started the process of amending the state constitution to allow for that. It's again something Governor Northam has been doing by executive order, restoring rights to people upon the time that they leave prison, and now the legislature has kicked off a process to amend the state constitution to keep that in place going forward.
This is something that I don't think is going to, this is such an important subject, Adam, and there are so many moving parts to it as we see more and more of these restrictions rolling out across several states. It doesn't appear that there's an end in sight, and we'll just have to see how it all plays out. But it is disconcerting for sure. You know, you've had many people suggesting that the way to ensure the integrity of our elections is to make it easier for people to vote, as opposed to making it harder, as you've heard from the president and others.
Yeah, and you know, Vlad,
this is going to be.
This is a country. Sorry, both Vlad and Adam. This is a country that incarcerates more people than, you know, many other countries in the world, and so. You know, and quite often when you are incarcerated, you do have to pay your fines and your fees, and in some cases the fees for the court case are higher than the actual fines for you know, what you're being accused of doing, and so you end up with an awful lot of people who do not have the right to vote in this country, and that's a problem. Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that's just exactly something that I think you're going to continue to see play out as this country, you know, reevaluates the criminal justice system and reforms that may need to take place to make things more equitable. Certainly, you know, when you saw Iowa do that last year, that was a Republican governor taking an executive order, and, you know, critics said it was something that was long overdue, but she was cheered for at least doing that. She's up for re-election next year, Governor Kim Reynolds, and did it before the November election, we should say, that those people had their rights restored in time. And we saw Washington State earlier this year pass the governor signed a law that would automatically restore voting rights for people upon their completion of their prison sentence. And that may impact, according to the AP, about 20,000 people in that state. And that law takes effect at the beginning of next year.
All right, Adam Brewster, some excellent reporting as always. Adam, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.